Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So are we lecturing on verse 515 at 5:30, or are we lecturing on verse 530 at 5:15? 5:15. We won't lecture on 5:30 today. In fact, we won't lecture on the 5th chapter, 30th verse on any day. What? What? How many slokas in the 5th? Why won't we lecture on the 30th verse? That's not rhetorical. Why can't we lecture on the 30th verse of the 5th chapter? There's only 29 verses. Good reason, okay. I was waiting for someone to come up with it. So, just to keep in mind exactly what we're lecturing on and what we're not. Everyone has it there? Nadate kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhu anjanan tritvam. It's not very light there. I need that flashlight that he had yesterday. Gyanam Tena Muyati. Oh, thank you. Muyati Jantavaha Najjate Kasyachit Papam Nachaiva Sukritam Vibhu Anjanane Navritam Tena Muyanti Yantavaha. Now, never. Adate accepts. Kasyachit. Anyone's. Papam. Sin. Na. Nor. Cha. Also. Eva. Certainly. Sukritam. Pious activities. Vibhu. The Supreme Lord. Agyanena. By ignorance. Avritam. Covered. Jnanam. Knowledge. Tena. By that. Muyanti. Are bewildered. Jantavaha. The living entities. English translation. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Shall we repeat that? Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of ignorance, which covers their real knowledge. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Sanskrit word vibhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is also satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so when the Supreme Entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Esha hui eva sadhu karma karyati, tam yam ebhyo lokabhya unminasate, Esha hi eva sadhu karma karoti, yam ado nimishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Katha Upanishad. Agyo jantur amiso yam atmana sukha dukayo ishvara priyito gachet svargam vasu abraham eva cha. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for its conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras also confirm this. Vaishyamya nigrinena saprakshatavat tata hidarshati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, although he appears to. Thank you. So, Om Jnana Timiranya Sagana Gana Salakaya Chaksurin Milatanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I don't remember it being this dark in here. We'll try to go back over some of this purport if I can see the letters there. But what Krishna is going into here, he's talking about how the Lord doesn't assume anyone's pious or impious activities, and the embodied beings are bewildered because of ignorance which covers their real knowledge. In all religious theology, there are several questions that have to be dealt with, and Krishna is dealing with these questions here. You know, one of these is, if the living entity is spiritual, how does he become affected by matter? Two is everything predetermined, or is it totally dependent on our self-will that controls everything? And three, the important one that many theologies have trouble dealing with. If God is all good, where does evil come from? And if everything comes from God, how can evil be there, and how can people be influenced to do evil things? So Krishna is dealing with these concepts here in a way that shows us. He explains, first, we are talking about how the living entity becomes bewildered. We see that we have some free will to make a choice. But the trouble is that each choice we make determines the next thing that will happen. If I go to the temple and I'm chanting carefully and I become detached from material sense objects, I feel happy doing that. But if I take the other choice and become attached to sense objects, then I lead myself away from Krishna consciousness. So what happens is the living entity is very small. Bigger than him is the whole material nature. But bigger than that is Krishna, fortunately. But it all depends on which one you choose. It's just like if there's two shops, and one shop is a very good shop, but you go in the other shop and complain that good products were not available. Well, you didn't go into the right shop. The right shop was available, but you chose to shop in a store that did not have the products that you actually needed. So, unfortunately, we think of happiness because of our bewilderment. We think there's three kinds of happiness. In the mode of goodness, well, it's like poison in the beginning, but it's nectar later on. Mode of passion, it's nectar right away. And in the mode of ignorance, it's poison in the beginning and poison in the end. So the best one must be the mode of passion, because you get what you want right away, correct? Is that correct? But does it seem that way? It seems that way to some people, yes? But is it true? It's not true. But to many people, it seems that way because you get it right away. But what do you get later? People don't care what they get later. They care what they get now. Doesn't matter if the cost exceeds the price, right? I'll give you this now. Don't worry, you can pay later. Tomorrow you say, what's the price? 18 crores of rupees. But you got it for free today, right? So it was the best deal ever. No, it isn't. So it behooves us, as it says here, if the living entity is bewildered because of ignorance, which covers their real knowledge, then we have to figure out how not to be bewildered. Did I say something wrong? He's leaving. We find that this word bewilderment comes in the second chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Krishna says that while contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment for them. From such attachment, lust arises. From lust, anger arises. From anger, bewilderment of memory. See, here's our bewilderment of memory. And memory is bewildered. When memory is bewildered, one falls into the material pool. So we see that it becomes degraded as time goes on. And this is why Krishna says that from whenever, in the 6th chapter, from whenever and wherever the mind wanders, one must pull it back under the control of the self. So we have to learn this, how to do this. But we see Krishna is dealing with these issues here, how the living entity, even being spiritual, is covered by matter. What about free will? We have the free will. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, you choose to get on a flight to America, and halfway you decide to go to Japan. Once you've made a choice, then you're subject to the things that come after that. So this is why it's giving the idea that man proposes and God disposes. is that we have the ability, the free will to make choices, but we're responsible for what happens. And if we make a certain choice, we lose our free will. So it isn't that God is taking away our free will, and it isn't as if God gives us free will to do whatever that we want without any consequence. So, says the living entity is by superior nature full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is Vibhu, but the omniscient, but the living entity is Anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. So, we have the ability to desire certain things, but then we are subject to the reactions of those. And since we have the free will to choose things, Krishna is giving us this free will. As we see the free will, we have the free will of choice, but it is limited to the consequences that come with those choices, good or bad, pious or sinful activities. We make the choice, and Krishna does not become responsible. He gives us the choice. So, it is not as if, how can a good God create evil? Evil is the lack of God. We make the choices which create reactions. And that reaction creates more actions that create more reactions, and on the cycle continues. But Krishna is not responsible. We are the one that gets to make the choices, because we are dealing in our small condition with these two circumstances. One, the material nature that is much bigger than us. Two, Krishna's spiritual nature, which is even much bigger than that. But people don't connect with the spiritual nature because they don't have experience. They don't believe that it exists. When I came to Vrindavan in the early 70s, I told some of these boys about a road we have in America called a freeway. You drive 100 kilometers an hour, no animals are allowed, no bicycles, no cross traffic. They yelled for their friends and said, "Hey, listen to the story this American made up about a road with no animals, and you can drive 100 kilometers an hour." Now, of course, they not only have TV where they can see this road, but you have the Jamuna Expressway, which is just like this, yes? But if the people hadn't experienced it, they wouldn't think that it existed. Reminds me of the story, the investor J.P. Morgan was investing in a new technology with Thomas Edison. And his father told him, "This will never work. It is just a circus show. No one will ever use it, and you're a stupid child to put any money in it." You know what it was? Electric wiring and light bulbs. Do they use those? They do. But because no one had experience of it, they figured it must not exist. This is my conclusion. If I don't know about it, it must not exist, correct? Is that a correct conclusion? It isn't. But do many people conclude this? If you told people about the cell phone before it existed and told them you would sell them the idea for it 100 years ago, what would they say? They would think you were trying to cheat them, yes? But now they just dial the numbers and make a call. They wouldn't think such a thing would work. Now my great-granddaughter turns the phone over to see if the person's there on the FaceTime, right? Because you see them in the front, they must be in the back, right? So, because we are limited, we don't understand these things. But you see, in all theology, particularly in the Christian theology, they have a great difficulty understanding that if everything comes from God and God is all good, then how can evil and sinful things come? How is it that God is making these things and making people responsible for them? So they go into great detail trying to explain this away. However, Krishna has dealt with our first two concepts, how the living entity can be covered by ignorance, even though he is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, and whether everything is predetermined or self-will. But he has also, just within this one verse, explained the concept of how there can be an evil. Because God gives us the free will to create what we want in our own world. And he does not assume those pious or sinful activities. We become responsible for them. So this is amazing that we see the Gita, so much knowledge is condensed in this book that you won't find in other scriptures. They have a difficult time in Christianity explaining this concept of how there is a God that's all good and how there can be evil. So you know what they do? They create that there's a devil, and sometimes the devil wins and sometimes God wins. So they kind of make it that there's a good God and a bad God. And they create this devil and have him create the evil. But where does the devil have to come from? He also has to come from God, right? Then it's another way they can be angry at certain people, because good people, which are my friends, they come from God, and bad people come from the devil. It was amazing. One politician in America was recently saying, well, you know, sometimes good people do bad things, and it isn't the same as when bad people do bad things, right? You go to Mathura and you rob the bank with a gun, and you say, listen, I'm a good person. When I do a bad thing, it's not the same as when bad people do bad things, correct? Is it true? Do they let you go? Do they give you a set of bracelets? They do. And they take you away because you're responsible for your actions. The way some of them decide with this dualistic concept is that I'm a good person, therefore it doesn't matter what I do because I'm good. Even if I do something bad, I'm still good. But you're a bad person. So even if you do something good, you're bad. And even if I do something bad, I'm still good. But does this make logic? No. Krishna has explained this concept here, that he doesn't assume anyone's pious or sinful activities. They're responsible for them. But the difference is that Krishna says here that, you know, if you want to do something on your own, Krishna sanctions it, he allows it. But when you turn to him, he guides you. It's said in this purport that Krishna doesn't, this is how we deal with this kind of contradictory ideas. You know, how does Krishna impartial, but he helps his devotees? You know, how does he give you free will, but at the same time, he creates some consequences? In the purport, it says that he does not interfere with our independence. However, if someone desires Krishna, then the Lord takes special care of him and encourages him in such a way that he can attain him and be eternally happy. It's kind of like when you're selling a product, like Vaisheshika when he does the books. He more or less divides it into steps. He gives everyone the opportunity, tries to get their attention. But if he can't get their attention, if he gets their attention, then he gets their interest, then he gets their desire, and then their action to buy a book. So he gives everybody the opportunity. But if somebody doesn't have the interest, then he lets them go. And if they do, he spends the time to explain the book, show the pictures, explain the benefits of it, explain where the temple is, and ask for a contribution. So it's the same way how Krishna deals. That He gives everyone the opportunity. But if you don't want to take the opportunity, he does not bother you more. But if you do take the opportunity, he gives the special care and the ways and the means to surrender to him. What was amazing I saw in the class this morning is, here's a question for you. Which person actually does better in Krishna conscious? Person A may be born in a good family, or he may be initiated by Prabhupada, or he may have a lot of money, and he thinks, I am so qualified, I don't have to surrender more to Krishna. Or a person who even has some difficulties, but he thinks, Krishna, I need your shelter, I have to surrender to you now. Which person benefits more? The second one. But the first person is more qualified. Let's say you are very qualified to drive to Delhi, and I'm not. But I get in a car and drive there. Which one will get there? If you're qualified to drive to Delhi, how come you don't make it there? Because you actually have to drive there, right? So a person thinks he's qualified to do something, but he doesn't do it. Yes? You say, oh, I am a very qualified artist, but I don't do paintings, so no one buys them. So we find that when Krishna puts us in difficulty, we actually get a better chance to surrender to him. So what happens is that in the material nature and the spiritual nature, they both become available for people. And they both have advertisements in certain ways that they can get through to you. They put a picture in the paper of the product, or they call you on the cell phone, or they have the ad on the TV or on the radio, something that tries to get your interest in this product. So I think they spend more time advertising the material products. Yes? Now, quite often with the product, there's a fruit called the mangosteen and the fruit the mango. Do they advertise those? Not too much, right? But they advertise the Coca-Cola a lot. You know why? Because the supply exceeds the demand. Whereas some of the fruits are so good that people want more of them than they can actually buy. Don't have to advertise. So the fact that they are advertising so strongly means that if they don't advertise, people won't want it. It must not really be as good as they would like us to believe that it is. So they spend so much time advertising these products by association. They put a picture of the car or the house or the Coca-Cola by a beautiful woman, and you think, oh, pleasing, beautiful, and then you think the product must also be, right? But it's not necessarily true, right? If I put a picture of the beautiful girl next to the cactus, so you hug the cactus, is it pleasing? No, it was false advertising. So we find that Krishna has given us ways to help people understand how not to be bewildered by this ignorance. Krishna explains this so vividly in Bhagavad-Gita. The first 6 chapters give us the idea of Sankhya and what is the difference between the body and the soul. People have a hard time with spiritual life because they don't know what spiritual is. The Christians, Muslims, and Jews, they bury the body thinking that the body will get resurrected. So if I say, oh, this is my body, oh, but this is my body, you get an inconsistent idea of what's matter and what's spirit. If the body is going to be resurrected, then what's spirit? Is it the body or something inside? So Krishna gives a very clear idea of this that you won't find in other scriptures, of the difference between the body and the spirit soul. How can we practice spiritual life if we don't know what spirit is? You can dress me up in a cricket uniform and give me a cricket bat, and what's the problem? I don't know what cricket is. I can give a lecture on it. Cricket is a sport. They have 11 players. They use a bat and a wicket, and Sachin Tendulkar is the best player. There's my cricket lecture, right? But if I don't know what cricket is or how to play, how am I going to play? So if we don't know what spirit is, how can we engage in spiritual life? I say, okay, I'll get up and dance the goobly-gook. Why aren't you dancing it? Why? Because you have no idea what the goobly-gook dance is. There is no such thing, but if we don't know what it is, how can we do it? So in the second 6 chapters, Krishna explains the nature of the Absolute, and the last 6, he explains the material nature and how to get free from it. So matter is one thing and spirit is another. Just like electricity is energy, and this is matter. So you have to put the electricity through something that is conducive. Do we put electricity through the metal or through the wood? Which one? Why not wood? It's not conducive. It won't conduct it. So we have a few ways that in the material world, spiritual things can appear that we can use as advertisements, ways to get people involved in Krishna consciousness and to keep ourselves involved in them. I'd like each of you to name one of these, not all at once. Can we think of 5 or 6 different things where Krishna makes something that appears to be material that's actually spiritual available to us? Who can think of one of them? The holy name, the Maha Mantra, that's one. Appears to be material sounds, but it's not. It's spiritual sound. So can we advertise this? How? Singing? Putting it on the radio, the TV, my sweet Lord? We can use this for our own advancement and for advertising. Can someone think of another one? Different person. What else? Prasadam. It appears to be food, but is it spiritual? Do we give that to people? We give it to people, but we don't take it ourselves? Is that it? Is it true? No, it's not true. We give it to people and we take it ourselves. If someone doesn't take it themselves, that's a bad sign. I remember when I was making the incense sticks, and my devotee friend we went to the chemist, and they use all the same flavorings for the incense they do for like the orange soda and the strawberry. And my friend says, do you make these sodas? He says, yes, I'm the chemist. He says, do you drink them? He says, oh, no, I never drink them. You figure if he's the one that makes them and he doesn't drink them, is that a bad sign? It is. So, there's 2. Can you think of another one? Which one? Well, that's a form of prasadam. So what? Which one? Books. Yes. The literatures. This is like we were just talking about Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion. We have so many of these books, and we should read these books, and we should encourage others to read these books. Do we do that? Is that one of our main preaching things? Because the people will keep it and can use it later. Now we have 3. Can we think of a couple more? That's also prasadam. We're thinking of some specific things that can help people to engage in devotional service. Yes, association of devotees. Pure devotees are the best, but if we can transmit that message to other people, representing the pure devotee, then we can get that message to them, right? Because we're connected. If you stick a fork in the socket, you'll get a shock, right? But if I grab you, I won't get a shock, will I? I will. Don't try that. You'll get a shock. If the person is getting a shock, you touch them, you will also get it. So if someone is connected to the spiritual master and you connect to them, are you connected to the spiritual master also? Yes. Try that one. Don't try the electric one. Okay, we have 4 of them. Can we think of some others? Yes? That's part of, that's accompaniment to the chanting of the holy name. What didn't you guys think of? What other ways? What are the ways that appear to be material? Can't miss these ones. These are mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion. It's there in print. I didn't make these up. I promise. I read it in a book. Which one? Well, that's sort of close to it. That's not quite. Now you're getting on the track, but the deity form. The Lord appears in the deity. That's part of the temple. And what's the other one? The what? Sankirtan is the holy name. We already have that. What's the other one? I'll give you a hint. You're sitting in it. And I don't mean a room. Where are we now? No. What's this place called? Vrindavan what? Dham. The Dham, the holy place. Vrindavan, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri. This place is a part of the spiritual world. So we use these things to advertise the spiritual life, and we also use these things ourselves. And we find that when we get people involved in Krishna consciousness, do we plant the branch of devotion, the tree of devotion, or we just start with the seed of devotion? Seed, not a tree? We don't plant a whole tree, just a seed? You mean we should start at the beginning? Like if you have a child who you want him to become an architect, would you send him to the first grade or straight to architect school? But you want him to be an architect. But if you miss the foundation, you think, I'll build a house, but I'll skip the foundation, the whole thing will fall in. So we plant the seed of devotion. So when we first meet someone, we just try to plant a seed. We tell them, take this book and read it at your leisure. Eat this food, come back, visit me next week. Prabhupada says we go in like the needle, out like a plow. We go in easily. And I find I saw these things affect my life. Should I tell you how some of these things entered and how it affected me? A couple of years ago, I went to this rock concert at the Orange County Fairgrounds. Well, it was 1967. I guess that's more than a couple of years ago. Okay, a little more than 5 decades ago. Is that right? And there was all these famous bands there, and the people from the mystic arts world in Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach is a special town where many mystical people are, many vegetarians. When I went to high school there, 1/3 of the high school was vegetarian. So the people from Mystic Arts had a natural food booth and a juice booth at this festival. And at the end, they all got together and they sang this song. You want to hear it? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I said, where did this song come from? There was no devotees there. They said, well, there's a Swami on Pico Boulevard. And Pico Boulevard moved to La Cienega. In 1970, it moved to Watsika. I never even went to the Pico Boulevard temple. But they said, chant this with us. It's a song to God, the names of God. So I chanted this with them, even though Prabhupada was not there or devotees. And later in the week, a friend of mine was shooting at animals, and he squished a dove with a rock. I said, that's a cruel thing to do. He said, well, you eat meat, don't you? I said, don't we all? He said, so does it make me, he said, how many animals do they have to kill for you to eat meat? I said, probably a lot. He says, does it make me any worse to kill one more bird? I said, you're right. He said, it's okay for me to kill the bird? I said, no. I said, I'll never eat meat again. And he was shocked. And when I told him a couple of years ago, and this person he would go out now and hunt animals and only eat animals that he killed. Of course, he died this year of diabetes. So maybe it didn't work as well for him because he's my age and I'm still alive. And he convinced me not to eat it, expecting to justify his position. So this was how hearing the chanting of the holy names led for a chance for me to, Krishna arranged some ways and means for me to stop eating meat. So my friends at the Mystic Arts World, they would always ask me to watch the bookstore while they went to do an errand. And I found a book in there called Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And this book said that bhakti means we just ask God for some way to serve him. So I went to my special meditation rock on the beach and I asked for some way to serve God. Now, strangely enough, many of these hippie people had heard through devotees, see there's another one, devotees in there, that for real spiritual life, someday we have to give up illicit sex and intoxication. But like the Christian theologian St. Augustine said, God, please make me chaste to you, but don't do it yet. So they didn't want to do it yet. So I went to my rock on the beach on January 5th, 1970, and I said, okay, God, I want, as I usually pray, send me some way to develop love for you. And I got this real strong inspiration that if I really want that, I have to give up illicit sex and intoxication. We give those up at one point, and we ask Krishna to protect us so that we can continue to give them up on a daily basis. You can't think, now that I forgot about that, it's all gone, right? No, we have to remember that Krishna needs to protect us, whether we think we do or not, right? Just like even the richest people. If you go to give them money, they take some money. They don't think, well, maybe I don't need it. They'll take some extra anyway, right? They take all the security they can get. So we'll take all the protection from Krishna we can get, just in case. So I thought, wow, this is January 5th, 1970. Maybe I'll have a couple more beer parties. Let me date a couple girls from high school I have my eyes on. And then I thought, no, it's either a good idea or it isn't. So I said, all right, God, I'll give up this illicit sex and intoxication, and you send me some way to develop love for you. And I wondered how long it would take, a week, a month, a year. And I opened my eyes, and it was like as far away as that door was a brahmachari walking towards me. And I said, what are you doing here? He said, well, we were up on the hill chanting, and I felt this uncontrollable need to come down to the beach. He said, would you like to come and chant with us? I said, yes, I think that's exactly what I'm supposed to do. So we find that when we make these things available to people, when they eat the prasadam, when they chant the holy names, when they associate with devotees, when they take the book home and maybe someone else reads it even, or they read it, they get a chance to connect with Krishna. So we have to find the proper praying. You know, when I was able to give things up and I prayed, Krishna came quickly. Isn't it? So I remember some of the other times I prayed in life. Another time I was in Paris, France with my family, and I finished high school and I wanted to go find the devotees. I was going to join the Los Angeles temple, but so I prayed, Prabhupada, please give me a way to serve you. And all of a sudden I heard a ting, 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 and I went and joined in with the devotees singing. And this was June of 1970. So I decided to stay in Paris until I came to India in March of 71. So when I prayed for a way to serve, Krishna came available to me. And then came March. It was so cold in Paris, France. And I said, Krishna, I'll make you a deal. you get me out of this cold, I promise never ever to complain about heat ever. They say, be careful what you pray for, you might get it. 3 days later, a letter came from Prabhupada saying, please send 3 devotees to India. So off I went to India. I got on the plane, it was like 5 degrees Celsius. When I got off, it was 30 degrees, which isn't so hot, but it's pretty hot when you got on a plane that was snowing. And it's funny, another time I saw this green color like this, that I really like this green color. And I saw that somewhere and I said, Krishna, I want to see this color somewhere I go a lot. And I went back to the temple, and Tukaram temple president says, come and see the color that we've painted the temple. See if you like it. And guess what? It was that color. And I went, wow, I wished for that. The other time was, I saw a woman who became wife number 2, and I said, Krishna, wouldn't it be nice if I had a woman like that one? But that was another story that didn't work out well, which we won't tell today. But it shows us that if we're going to pray for things, we find that quite often our thoughts are also like prayers, our desires are like prayers, that we have to think carefully before we ask for it. Fortunately, when I got out of the cold weather, I got to be with Prabhupada in India, so it worked out okay. But I never saw this commercial, but someone from Australia told me this commercial, that the person prayed, he prayed, please make me rich, cool, and irresistible to women. So he got changed into a chocolate chip cookie in the refrigerator. And a girlfriend goes home and says, Tim, where are you? Tim, where are you? And she goes and looks in the fridge and goes, wow, what are these? She goes, wow, these are irresistible. And they're so cool too. So you have to be careful what, right? What we wish for. So this tells us that, this explains this, as theologians have this difficulty understanding where does evil come from if God is all good, and is everything predetermined, or is our self-will control everything? We find here that Krishna has explained this all, that they have to go through volumes of work. This has all been explained in one verse very clearly and distinctly. The man proposes and God disposes. We have our free will to make choices, but then we're bound by those choices, and Krishna is not responsible for our pious and impious activities. The fact that impious activities go on is not God's fault. He's allowed us the ability to create for ourselves what we want. So we have to be very careful with these choices, that when we're praying, what if I decided to pray to meet those 2 girls instead of give them up and engage in devotional service, right? What would happen then? I remember when I did pray for a woman and it didn't quite work out. I remember when I prayed to find some way to develop love of God, even though I had to give something up, to give something better, right? I say, I want you to give me 1,000 rupees. I'm going to give you a kilo of gold. Now, is it hard to give it up? No, because how much is a kilo of gold worth? How many rupees? How many? You calculate? How many? I don't know. A kilo is like 36 ounces. How much is an ounce of gold worth? In rupees, how many? You don't know? Maybe almost lack of rupees for ounce of gold? Ounce of gold is lack of rupees? So if a kilo is 36, it must be 36 lakhs, 35 lakhs. So it's worth paying 1,000 for, yes? The trouble is we think these things are worth something, yes? We're thinking we have the choice of go back to Godhead or suffer here. There was the TV show in the 50s of Bing Crosby, who was such a kripana, a miser. And the thief says, give me your money or give me your life. He doesn't say anything. And he says, come on, give me your money or give me your life. And he says, it's a difficult decision. But how can it be a difficult decision? If he's going to take your life, what do you do with your money? Say, okay, I'll give you my life, but I'll keep my money. Does that sound all right? Yes? But you're attached to your money. So you give your life instead, right? No. But do people do this? They do. So we have to understand by Sankhya what the real value of things are. We can do what we want, but we have to pay for it. And we've been paying for a long time. So now we need to understand this knowledge so that we don't become bewildered by ignorance, and we can become free and engage in Krishna consciousness, because Krishna is not going to have to assume our pious or impious activities. Any questions or comments about this? Yes. He has a question. Yes.
So in purport essence, Krishna is not responsible for your good or bad.
Yes.
But you see, as an example for giving, just like a vehicle is standing, if driver is there, he will drive the car.
Yes.
So this is what is our vehicle.
Yes.
And driving is Atma and Paramatma. So who is guiding us and who is giving us intelligence to?
We discussed that in the verse, is that Krishna gives us free will. If we don't want to turn to him, he sanctions it and allows us to seek our guidance somewhere else. But if we turn to him, then he guides us. It's just like if I say, you can come listen to my class, or you can do something else. If you do something else, I let you go. If you listen to the class, I give you more guidance. So Krishna gives them the choice. And if they turn to him, then he guides them. If they don't, then he allows them to do what they want, but they have to pay the price.
So for this one, who is giving the intelligence?
The intelligence is already there, but we're covering it up. We're covering it up. It has to come from desire. We have to have at least, that's why we talked about the Bhakti Lata Bija. We have to have at least enough desire to try it. Enough desire to try spiritual life.
So all the desires and everything coming from where?
Desires are coming in our heart.
From where?
Where do the desires come from? Where? They could, because the soul is individual, he has his own desires. But his desires are either to work in conjunction with Krishna or to try to enjoy on his own. And based on either one of those, so many new desires come along. You desire to serve Krishna, so many ways to desire to serve Krishna come along. You desire selfish activities, and so many things sprout out of that. They're both like seeds, and so many things sprout from them. One thing leads to another. It comes out of selfishness.
So all things are coming from Krishna.
Yes.
The desire also coming from Krishna.
Originally it comes from Krishna, but he gives us our independence. He gives us the choice to be able to make our own choices. He gives us the freedom to go in which direction we want. And by us going in a direction, we create things that are either good or not good based on our desires.
So we listen to him, he gives us the desire, and we say, you do it, this one, or you don't do it. But whatever he says, then if we don't...
No, he gives us the free will to create our own desires.
Yes, so if we are doing something wrong, so that he's saying, don't do this wrong, but we are doing wrong, we are not listening to him. We are doing wrong.
Yeah.
This also thinking to do wrong is coming from where?
Yes, it's mentioned in there that he gives them the ability to go to heaven or go to hell. If that's what you want, he gives you that ability. That's why I said earlier we have to be careful what we desire. I wanted to get out of the cold. Krishna gave me ability to come to hot weather. We have to be careful because like I said, be careful what you pray for, you might get it. So we have to be careful what we desire, because Krishna may give it to us. And if we desire the right thing, we'll get the right result. If we desire the wrong thing, we'll get a difficult result. That why it behooves us to study the Sankhya and read Bhagavad-Gita and understand the cost to value ratio. The cost is the price, the value is what it's really worth, right? Like if I'm selling 10 lakhs of rupees for 1 lakh, it's a good price, right? But if I'm selling 10 lakhs of rupees for 1 crore, it's not a good price, right? So we have to look at our actions in the same way. What am I paying for it? What am I getting it back? Am I getting eternity, knowledge, and bliss? Or am I getting ignorance, temporary, and suffering?
So this power of thinking is coming from
Krishna gives it to us because we are a part of Krishna, and Krishna has free will, so he gives it to us. And what we do with it is our business. We can't blame Krishna for it. That's what he's explaining here.
that's why we have to suffer life after life. We are suffering
Yes.
because of our desires.
Yes. Yes.
And now you have become a devotee. This is your desire to become a devotee, or it was in your past karma.
It must be a combination of the things. And because I came in contact with this book that told me how to pray, right? If you have a map that shows you how to get to Mathura, it may be easier than just wandering around and thinking you'll end up there. Because here's the problem. If you don't know where you're going, it's difficult to get there, isn't it? Yes? We have to have our destination sure in mind. If you don't know your destination, it's going to be difficult to get there. So we must keep our destination in mind, Krishna Loka, Krishna's service, Prabhupada's service, and figure out the ways to get there. Because Krishna will allow us to do what we want. That's the free will. Because that's what love means, that we have the chance to do as we want, to do it voluntarily. If he forces us, it's not love.
Many of them read Bhagavad-Gita, but still they cannot understand and they cannot follow the Bhagavad-Gita, what Krishna says.
Well, as soon as you tell yourself you can't do something, it's going to be difficult. Start with not saying that. Say with, I may be unqualified, but I'm going to seek mercy. This may be difficult for me. It's just like I sleep on the plane. Other people say, oh, I can't sleep on a plane. I said, first problem is you're telling yourself you can't do that. Maybe you say, I can't do this without Krishna's mercy, but with Krishna's mercy, I can do this. You don't want to give your brain bad messages. Don't tell yourself, just like you never tell a child, oh, you're accident prone, you always fall down. You never tell them, because then they start doing that. You don't give the brain bad messages. Say, I'm having difficulty doing this, I have to pray for mercy because I by myself am not qualified, but Krishna can help me. But once you say you can't do something,
Okay, thank you.
all right.
Thank you very much. Spirit soul has left with the companion of Krishna.
The spirit soul has what?
Left with the companion of Krishna
Yes.
and suffering a lot.
There's in the play about the Divine Comedy. Who wrote that? Was it Dante, the Italian one? That the devil says, I would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. So we would rather be the ruler in our own hell than have to serve to be with Krishna. We want to be in charge no matter what it takes. We want to be the center of attention.
My question is how many, it was millions of years or it left or it is just recently we rejected Krishna and came to this Bhagavad-Gita or some other planet we have come here or directly we came here.
Usually they fall down to like the Brahmaloka planet and go down from there. First first time they come, they get a good chance to like finish it that lifetime. Prabhupada says that to the position of like a Brahmaloka. And they go there and they get a chance. And then with all the facilities there, if they mess that up, then you go down to the bottom of the cycle and work back up again. So first chance, you quite often get a good chance. And then when you mess that up, right? It's like if someone's arrested for a crime, they put them on probation, let them do all their normal activities. They don't have to be in jail, but then they commit the crime again, then the probation is revoked and then they go to prison, right? So now we have the opportunity, let's do it properly now. I don't know how to calculate how many years or lifetimes. I don't have that formula here. Like someone asked me, can you understand how Krishna transformed into all the cows and the cowherd boys? I said, no, I'm not qualified for that, and that's why Krishna explained it to Balaram, because it's, as they say, beyond our pay grade to understand that, but Balaram can. So some of this is beyond our understanding. All right. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. But Krishna sums up that it's like the Catholic theologians go through volumes of things trying to explain this, how a good God can create evil and how God is not responsible for the evil you create for yourself. And Krishna summed this up in one verse, and the idea of independence and predetermination is a combination of the two, all in one verse. That's pretty good how he did that. They weren't able to do that in volumes of work, and it's still left unexplained.